Hey everybody, back with another movie this week, one that I've been waiting for a long time. This year it's one of my more anticipated movies, and that is the movie Possessor. Of course, it's released this year. Limited release currently in theaters only, I believe, but you will get it as a VOD, probably to rental or to buy within the next couple weeks. So by mid-October, I think you should be able to get a hold of this if you don't have a theater that you're safe enough to go to nearby that has it. That being said, what is first and foremost notable about Possessor is it is the second film by Brandon Cronenberg. Now, of course, Cronenberg is a very famous name in the world of horror and sci-fi and mind-bending movies. And kind of like Cosmatos, who made Mandy, and Black Rainbow. Can't remember the first part of that. Something the Black Rainbow. Beyond the Black Rainbow. This is a very promising movie from a son of a famous director. His first movie I have not seen yet. I'll probably have to go back and check it out. But this movie is definitely something that should be on your radar. If you're a fan of Cronenberg, especially the era of things like Scanners, Videodrome, Existenz, those kind of things, I think you might really dig Possessor. It is a little less body horror. It's not so much transformation of bodies. There's little elements of body horror, but it definitely has the flavor and the feel of the kind of the sci-fi slash violence slash social issues that the Cronenberg movies also had. So, what is Possessor and who is in it? The main character, well, one of the main characters is Tasia Voss, and she is played by Andrea Riseborough, which I think I'm saying that right. Probably you know her best from Mandy. She's also been in Oblivion. She's been in a ton of things. She's one of those actresses that I think is just starting to get noticed as somebody to really watch. She's great in everything she does, and she really is super good in this as well. And she plays essentially an assassin. They basically plug them into some sort of machine that kind of taps into their brain, and this allows Tasia to basically drop into another person and control them. So the other person kind of becomes like a puppet, and they're pretending to be that person, controlling that person's body, and therefore they can go and commit a murder slash assassination. You don't ever get a full picture of the organization that Tasia works for, but you get the idea of it's super dark corporate espionage where you have a rival or a rival company, and you can use this sort of technique to get power or to knock them down so you get power in your company, those kind of things. The very opening of the movie is her doing a hit. You see how it goes down. There's a few issues in it that you find out were not planned to go the way they went. And you also find out that the very end of the hit is supposed to be the body she's in, she commits suicide, and therefore she kind of leaps back out into her own real body. It all sounds complicated, but it really isn't that complicated. You figure it out pretty quickly. It's done in a way that's very understandable. But in that first hit, she'll say, "Take me out," and she's supposed to kill the character that she's playing, the person she's playing. She's supposed to kill that actual body, and she can't do it. And that's the first sign that there's some kind of cracks in her shell. So after this hit, she meets up with her handler, kind of her boss, and that's played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. That character is called Girder, and she is kind of grooming Tasia to be her successor because she thinks she's too old to be doing this anymore. And as part of when they end a mission, they kind of have a debriefing, and she has this box full of items that she'll have Tasia go through that are personal items from her history, and she'll describe each item as she goes through them, and that kind of proves that she's mentally back to herself. And this plays a key role in kind of how her character changes as it goes on. I won't describe it all, but it's just a way to kind of know if she's mentally, staying connected and stable, because obviously she's popping into other people's lives and controlling them, and that's got to have some weird effects. The other major kind of subplot at the beginning of this is that she is estranged, separated from her husband and child. And you guess that that's probably greatly due to, this job that she has, which is very strange and probably mentally scarring. But you also find out that her handler really doesn't like her having any connection with her former family, because obviously having empathy or personal connections to humans makes a killer less predictable and less consistent. If they're going to have feelings and remorse, they're not going to be the best killer in the world. And this is a cutthroat corporate entity of some sort, so they don't want you to have any sort of feelings and understanding. That's kind of the idea there. So the main story after that is her having a big mission to go kill a guy, and she's going to kill a guy who runs a company that data mines. Now, this is really interesting. This is where you really start to feel kind of the Cronenberg DNA coming out. I always have these memories of like Scanners and some of those early Cronenbergs, especially of there's things like kind of corporate, lots of kind of architecture, lots of sleek, semi-futuristic buildings, but real buildings in the real world. Kind of this cold iciness, kind of combined with, human transformation and this human battle between technology and being controlled by forces beyond their humanity. And that is going on here as well. So I definitely saw a lot of the Dad Cronenberg kind of leaking out a little bit. So the basic concept is she's going to drop into this other guy, a guy this time. The first time it was a woman. So that has some interesting aspects to it. She's going to drop into Colin Tate. He's played by Christopher Abbott. You might know Christopher Abbott from It Comes at Night. He was also in Piercing. He's one of those actors that, kind of a good-looking dude. But he does a really good job in this. And that's good because if there's one kind of drawback, other than kind of the slow, very dark pace of this, which might turn some people off. The other thing that kind of, I would say, is a slight detriment is that you're so into the character played by Andrea Tasia. She's so good and so affecting that you're drawn into her pretty quickly. The fact that you're mostly in this other character played by Christopher Abbott is a little bit of a drawback because you kind of miss her, even though she's supposed to be in him and you see some stuff about what's going on with her back in the pod, or whatever. You kind of wish that you had her in there a lot more. But he does a good job. And the whole idea is he's dating a daughter of this big corporate dude played by Sean Bean. And well, what will happen with Sean Bean? He's very notorious for certain things happening to him. I won't tell you, but I'm going to say you probably won't be disappointed. She's a daughter of Sean Bean, and he runs kind of this data mining company. And that's a really interesting thing, too. They only hint at it. And once again, all these corporations and what's going on in the world is just slightly futuristic and playing on what's happening in real society. They never fully describe it. They just let you kind of fill in the gaps, which is kind of cool. This data mining company, what they do is it looks like people just kind of sit in these banks of monitoring stations, and they basically tap into people's personal devices at their homes and webcams or whatnot, and they just log everything these people have in their homes. Like his job is to log the curtains. And obviously they're doing this to do targeted marketing to people, either those individuals directly or to the world at large. They're going to say, hey, 90% of the people have this kind of curtain. We're going to sell them this curtain on all their social media. So kind of interesting. They don't say it as overtly as that. But that's what's going on, and that's not probably far from reality. Pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, he's supposed to go in there and kill Sean Bean because that'll give them a new corporate foothold in this company. And that's kind of the basic bone structure of this movie. Now, obviously, the conflict has to go with the cracks that you already saw appearing in Tasia's character and how she can or can't deal with this kind of, mind-melding puppet master weird role that she plays, and how it's messing her up and how it messes up the person she's in. It's very interesting. There's some aspects of her personal life that keep coming into play. Once again, I would say if you're into Cronenberg, especially kind of hardcore Cronenberg, this should be right up your alley. If you're into slow burn, art house, sci-fi horror, A24 kind of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy this. I think there are some really interesting layers to uncover under here, and it is mostly about the character more than it is about the outcome of the plot, and that I really appreciate. We're in a year where I was really disappointed by the kind of the mind-bending, empty plot I thought of Tenet. This is a mind-bending plot, which some people might consider empty, but I feel it has a lot more depth because it's really about a journey this character is taking. Now, last but not least, it's called Possessor Uncut. I think they just changed the name partly for, pull people in. Ooh, it's uncut. What's in here? But that being said, I can see why this would be uncut because definitely the studios would want to release this in a cut version for a couple reasons. There is a fair amount of nudity, which is not unusual, but male nudity that you don't usually see in the way that it's shown here happens at least a couple times. And for whatever reason in our society, that has to be cut. So that's not cut in here. And there is violence, of course, as Cronenberg is going to be violence. It's not quite as much body horror as you would expect, but it is very visceral and very personal, and it will hit you. You'll watch it and go like, oh, 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 oh. And there's a couple scenes that will definitely, even a hardened horror gore fan will take note. Not much CGI. I really appreciate lots of practical effects. So the violence is not unrealistic, but very visceral. And last but not least, it would have been cut based on the violence that occurs to a certain character towards the end of this movie. Of course, I will not spoil it. It would not be shown that way or allowed to be shown that way probably in a theater. It will mess you up, and it could highly trigger certain people. That being said, this is definitely a movie that could garner some good spoiler discussion if you like it. I do personally like it quite a bit. Hope you get a chance to check out Possessor. I'm sure it'll be very polarizing. Some will hate it and some will love it. I don't think there'll be a lot of kind of like it's, but we'll see. Be back soon with another movie.